bags my children are, and then they will give it to her, and she's 76 and she cannot ward off.
So just so you all know, we're about to go live and stream to YouTube. I know we're starting a little bit early, but I just want to get it going.
Yes, I agree.
So your conversations, anything that you say from this point forward.
Okay.
All right.
We will jabber each other.
Yes.
I'll set up jabber.
And Norris, am I able to plug in when you're done?
Absolutely.
Oh, this will be fun. All my stuff. Okay. Let's get my stuff in.
We can see all your stuff too.
Oh.
Jabber's not up there. So.
Well, you can't jabber me. Don't put me in the group
No, me,
No.
me neither.
Okay, never mind. I'll just third chat with Anthony.
Because I
We
can't-
find each other.
Yeah, I guess I'll just close that. That would be
No
embarrassing. wouldn't it?
snickering.
Yeah, don't chapter, Lori, please.
How do I close Jabber once I have it open? That
Um,
through.
Right click,
I did.
doesn't work.
I did. Norris,
I'll be right there.
thank you.
Okay, so Lori, I've passed
Have you tried yelling at us?
post back to you. So right now, are you trying to open Jabber?
No, I'm trying to close it.
Or try
because
to
I don't
close
want
it.
to be jabbered.
So if you don't want to be jabbered, what you have to do is
So you're,
you open Jabber.
yeah. Actually, just.
This little down arrow, and you can click on do not disturb
Not that really.
to completely close the application. Go here to the cogwheel and sign out. Okay, so you are now the meeting host.
Yeah. Okay, so.
So just to show you all, this is the view anyone on YouTube will be seeing right now. Okay, there's about a 30-second, not that it matters to you, but there's what you're seeing here. If I wave, there's about a 30-second delay for that stream to get processed and uploaded to the internet and
Okay.
semi-real time. But that's the view everyone will be seeing on YouTube. When they are in Zoom, if Lori was to open up a presentation or something,
Just share that. Yes.
if you can share your screen in Zoom. So this is, so what you want to do is, there are two ways you can share. You may want to share only a window, such as what you'll be
That's
doing
what I
right
want,
now,
yep.
Got the videos there, that's why.
but you are sharing. Yes, so that's what they will see, is only the window.
Oh, cool.
So in your case, you want to make sure that you're sharing only the presentation or PowerPoint.
Okay, well, that's all the housing forum stuff. That's like the videos and the,
There's a couple videos.
there's a couple
to pop
videos
in.
and a presentation. So
Okay,
that's
let's go ahead and
everything's
launch a PowerPoint, because typically when you share the Windows Explorer window, it won't share the files within the window.
Okay.
So double click on, we'll say the.
Can I try this?
Sure.
That's all I'm worried about.
So you see that's open, but we don't get
Oh, what I'm doing.
what you're doing because
fine.
you've
Oh,
instructed it to
okay.
only share
Sure,
Okay.
the File
then what
Explorer
happens
window.
with this?
okay. But it'll pop up.
It will pop up, but that's not being shared.
I know.
So
So then what do I
potentially you may want to share your full desktop
think I do?
I think so.
this way as you move between applications.
I think so.
Right.
That
And
makes
if you have any files on your desktop with any names of content that might be
I moved
confidential.
those.
sense. No, they're
I
all
did
the
that last
sensitive
night.
stuff, yeah.
Perfect.
Or,
Yes.
or like the emails popping up.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
close my email.
Yeah.
Am I? Will I be able to open this if I have my email closed? Because that's in an email, that link.
There isn't, I don't, you know what, we can look at it offline because you all use multiple monitors. Consider this a second monitor. you could put your laptop into what's called extended desktop mode,
Okay.
and this screen would be your second monitor to Zoom. But for the
Holy
purpose,
show.
if that's something you're comfortable with doing, we can set that up. If not, for now, for simplicity's sake, we can leave it.
Let's keep it simple.
Just for today.
Right.
Yeah.
But what can I do about my email?
So for your
Copy that.
email, you would have to completely exit your email.
Okay, well, what do I do about this? Because this is through an email. I just saved the email in that folder.
Okay, so we have this. So this
It's
is
not like my dorm room.
So this is a link to a video
Yes,
on a website. You have the website open with the video open,
okay,
so you can close your email.
okay. Okay,
Nothing from.
Great.
Nadine.
And then you want to go and stop sharing,
Yeah, as long as we're 6 feet apart.
we
Yes.
share again,
Nadine says yes.
oh,
Awesome, as long as we're 6 feet apart, I am.
And only the
definitely-
speaker,
and share your desktop.
the rest of us back off.
Okay,
Whatever.
so we can
How
have it
do I
off.
share my
6 feet
desktop
apart.
then?
Just
So
one.
the desktop is,
I'm gonna want the video first anyway.
which is fine. So even though
Okay.
you're going to,
For drinking.
again, for simplicity, by sharing your full desktop, you will be sharing everything, so you can just pick items to be shared.
So I'm gonna go here.
Again, no, you're only sharing this window, so they won't see that one, so we'll stop sharing again. And share again. And your desktop that's Chrome,
This one? No?
scroll up, sorry, let's see the scroll up.
Oh. Yeah. Come on, turn on my mouse. No, it's not going up. That's it.
It won't go up.
I think maybe because this is open.
Uh,
There's somebody there.
We've got lots of time. 8:44.
Oh, yeah. This is housing and homelessness. That's tons of time.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just in time normally.
But
Just
seriously,
tons of
we are
time.
so.
We're
Okay, so
efficient.
do
We
this
don't
one, share
waste.
screen.
We are.
That was the one we did, wasn't it?
Let me just like stop everything and then start again.
Of course, I was listening to Alan Doyle on the way, and so I'm all peppy and excited.
I was actually speaking to a friend. We are buying Alanis Morissette tickets for next
They're
year in
awesome.
London.
That is
See, the green is
amazing.
now around the
I'm
entire
pretty pumped.
monitor,
That's pretty awesome.
so we're sharing your
Like,
entire
I have
screen, so
not
everything,
seen
you-
Alanis
everything,
Morissette.
No.
every action you do on your
I've never heard
desktop
of it.
Yeah.
is now being shared,
Okay, I gotta
Okay,
turn
so
my
when this
sound off so
video's
I don't get
done-
jabbered either.
right? So when the video is done,
Morning, Lucy.
Morning, David.
How
Good
are
to
you?
see you. Good.
Good. Good to see you.
I'm not cam muted. What?
I might stop at Costco and pick up some hamburgers. Anything you need from here? Like strength thing or
I've got
Good morning. Welcome and happy National Housing Day. We are trying something a little different this year. We're joining you from a room at the new City Hall. Hopefully you can hear us as we present the different parts of the agenda today, but welcome. We're glad to see you. I'm Deb Schlichter. I'm the Acting Director of Housing and Homelessness Services. And thank you for joining the 12th Annual Brantford Brant Housing Forum to celebrate National Housing Day. Before we begin, we're just going to go over a little bit of the etiquette for today's event with Zoom. We would like to see you, so if you're able to show your self, that would be wonderful. We'd like to see your faces. And it's one way we can network, even though we are meeting virtually and distant from each other. This is feels like we can connect. So thank you. It's great to see your faces. And we're muting everyone so we can minimize the background noise. But when we get to the question period, we will give you more instructions at that point. So National Housing Day is celebrated each year, November 22nd, across Canada, but each community finds a day during this week, and we're celebrating today on the 24th. We celebrate it with our partners, stakeholders, Canadians across the country. It's a day to acknowledge the work that's done by hundreds of organizations, thousands of people, ensuring everyone across Canada has the dignity of a home. But it's also an opportunity to reflect on the work that has been done and the work that still needs to be done as well. So we're looking at our accomplishments, but we're not stopping there. We still have more work to do. We have a full morning, so let's get started. And I'm pleased to introduce our special guests. We have elected officials with us to bring greetings. And so first I'd like to introduce our MP, Larry Brock, who's bringing greetings by video. Larry Brock was elected to the House of Commons in 2021 as a member of Parliament for Brantford Brant. Larry was born and raised in Brantford, and he's been a practicing lawyer for the last 30 years. Since 2004, he's been the Assistant Crown Attorney for Brantford. And here is a video of Mr. Brock bringing his greetings.
Can't hear it.
Oh, there's no voice.
Window.
Just a few technical issues. We're going to try to see if we can get the sound.
Annual
There we go.
Housing Forum to celebrate National.
That's great.
Good morning. I'm Larry Brock, your Member of Parliament for Brantford Brant, and I want to thank the City of Brantford for hosting the 12th Annual Housing Forum to celebrate National Housing Day and to bring everyone together to discuss this incredibly important issue. Stable and affordable housing is a determinant of health and helps provide the foundation for resiliency. We know our community succeeds when everyone has a safe, affordable place to call home. I look forward to working in partnership with all the stakeholders to address this pressing issue in our community. Best wishes for a positive and constructive discussion. Thank you.
Can you ask them if they heard that?
Thank you, Larry, and welcome to your new role as our elected official and MP. We're glad to have you on board. Our next speaker that is coming by video is our MPP, Will Boma. He serves as a Brant. Okay, he serves as a Brant County Councillor from 2014 until his election as MPP for Brantford Brant in 2018. He currently serves as the parliamentary assistant to the premier, and he's very supportive of housing. So here he is bringing his greetings.
This window,
Thanks.
this window.
When Will Bowman here, MPP for Brantford, Brant, Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Finance. I am so excited to bring greetings to the city of Brantford as they have their annual housing forum this year. Today's theme is affordable housing, a place to call home. You know, this is something that I have realized is so important. You know, the province can do things, but it takes a willing municipality to really partner with the province to be able to develop different things that will be a home for every single one of our citizens. And I have to tell you that Brantford has done such an amazing job on this. So I'm really pumped about the schedule this year, really love the theme. And let's see if we can all work together so that everyone has a home. Have a great afternoon.
So we're having a few technical issues at our end. This is typical of every Zoom meeting I've ever been on. We're trying a new format this year, so we're working through the glitches. So hopefully bear with us as we figure things out. I would like to welcome our next guest, the Mayor, David Bailey. David Bailey was elected mayor of the County of Brant in 2018, serving his first four-year term. He helped to negotiate a partnership with Habitat for Humanity, Brant Norfolk, to build on a residential lot in the Oakville community. So very familiar with housing and a housing advocate. He was a co-chair of the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force in 2020. And I'd like to invite Mayor David Bailey to bring his greetings on behalf of the County of Brant. Thanks.
Good morning and thank you. My name is David Bailey and I'm the mayor of the County of Brant. It's my privilege to bring greetings from the County of Brant and my council. I'm pleased to be here today to support and celebrate the National Housing Week, a time to come together and reflect on the tremendous work that's being done as the challenges of our community are having a couple of bad years with the onset, obviously, of COVID-19, the pandemic. It's affecting our most vulnerable populations. Stable and affordable housing for our residents is very important to the County of Brant and the community partners. A house is not just a building, and there's never been a better time to realize in the recent history, that a home needs to be a place where you feel safe for your own mental and physical well-being. I think that we must tie these services around our housing and talk about all the pieces of housing when we talk about housing. The lack of affordable housing units, it's very serious right now, but I do thank the staff of the city of Brantford for all the work that they've put into this. And I would like to thank the community for knowing that this is a problem and putting it at the forefront of all of our discussions. Because if we don't have people safe and feeling safe and being healthy and physically secure, we're never going to get anything else done. We really do have to take care of the people and the people on the streets. And the pandemic is a little bit in our way, but we can do it. And I really do look forward to the partnership with the city of Brantford. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey, for your words of encouragement and support. We appreciate that. Next, I'd like to introduce Mayor Kevin Davis. Mayor Kevin Davis was elected the 50th mayor of the city of Brantford on October 22nd, 2018. Kevin Davis is a passionate community activist committed to improving the quality of life for the residents of Brantford that he's honored to serve. And he also was the co-chair with Mayor David Bailey of the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force. So I'd like to invite Mayor Kevin Davis to bring his greetings on behalf of City of Brantford.
Yeah, thanks very much, Deb, and good morning and welcome to everyone. And my counterparts from the county, I see Mayor Bailey's here and Councillor John Bell. And of course, we have Councillor McCreary here, and we have another councillor I don't see. But I want to give you not just greetings, but some good and encouraging news. because I never like to just give greetings. I like to talk a little bit and never give me a stage to talk. So unless you're ready to listen. So, this issue of housing, I came into the position of mayor probably not as familiar with some of the societal problems we have, given my background, and probably not as familiar as I probably should have been, but I quickly became familiarized with the societal problems. And one thing I quickly concluded, whether it was mental health issues, substance abuse, or those who are suffering as victims from family breakdown, it seemed like there was a common thread that kind of wove through all of those problems. And it was a lack of the type of housing that people could access and provide them with a safe place to live. And if you don't have a safe place to live, it's really hard for you to tackle those other issues that you have in your life. So it's a common denominator to the success of a lot of those different types of programs that address societal needs. So knowing that, and the council of the city of Brantford, we've made the issue of affordable housing, it's a top priority for this council, and it is for me personally. And so teaming up in partnership with Mayor David Bailey, we did strike that mayor's task force. And the goal there is, in this issue of affordable housing, there's lots of confusion, right? What it is, and there's CMHC programs, et cetera. But this mayor's housing task force, what we were trying to grapple with is the need for geared to income rent for those that are most needy, and building units that will meet that demand, because they aren't really met through private sources or other nonprofit sources to the same degree that a city and other municipalities can do. So the good news is that teamed up with Mayor Bailey, we do have a target of 506 units. This would be municipal builds done in partnership with the County of Brant. And we're already making progress. We have build and site locations throughout the city and the county that we can now move on. And these will be builds that are mixed use. So there'll be it'll be a mixed community. So there'll be a portion that are market rent, a portion will be the affordable rents as defined by the CMHC, and a portion will be the geared to income, especially important for those who have fixed incomes, whether that be pension income or some kind of government benefit program. And that's a real core need. Many of the people on our waiting list for the city and county, 1,700, need that type of housing. So there were two very significant events last night that I think will move this forward. One is that there is some of the financing from the city perspective comes from the sale of city properties as opposed to raising debt or increasing taxes. And we decided last night to sell the Forester property across the Victoria Park. And that's going to put $3 million into a fund that will be used for this program. Also last night, both councils agreeing to and endorsing a program that provides more detail and more meat to how we move together and deal with the housing issues in our communities. And it does set out, I think, a really good framework for a partnership that moves beyond words and actually gets things done for the benefit of both communities. And I think those are two very significant events last night that will allow the municipalities to move forward in a really meaningful way. I'm talking about building units to help address this problem. The Mayor's Housing Task Force also has a component in it of working in partnership with other nonprofits. There's a number of them. I'm sure some of them have representatives here today. And of course, that is an important part of that program. Lastly, I'm very glad today that there is an Indigenous component to this, because in our city, we have at least 10% of our population have Indigenous background or Indigenous heritage, probably higher than 10%. And so I think it's important in our housing program, as we're developing it and building units and planning them, that we consider this aspect of the need in our community. And so I was quite pleased to see that today that is one of the themes that's being addressed. And so I wish all of you the best, and thank very much to city staff for once again having a housing forum that helps us focus on this important priority for our communities and helps us advance the issue in a way that actually starts to, continues to address it in a significant way. So enough for me talking. Let's get into it.
Thank you very much, Mayor Davis. We are very excited to hear the good news from last night's meeting, and that really does help forward the direction that we're going to build more affordable housing. So great to hear. Next, I'd like to invite Councillor Dan McCreary, Councillor for City of Brantford, to bring greetings. Dan McCreary has been Ward 3 councillor since 2003, and he's currently the chair of the Social Services Committee. So I'd like to invite him to bring greetings now. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Deb, for that acknowledgement that I'm getting older. I'd like to bring greetings on behalf of the members of the Social Services Committee, as well as the remainder of Brantford City Council. It's a pleasure to be here today. I believe this is number 12, and I think I've been here for every one of them. This serves a worthwhile purpose, as did the Mayor's Task Force. It allows people with like-minded interests to come together and have a discussion around basically what's our supreme need for additional housing in the city and county. And I want to talk a bit about a testament to city-county cooperation. This is probably the longest living relationship that we have with the county is with respect to social services and the housing component. And we are very good partners. And to quote an activity from many years ago when we were talking about boundary adjustment, we do enjoy a partnership and prosperity, and that will continue. As the mayor indicated, we do have a firm commitment to providing affordable housing in this community. Kevin mentioned the $3 million that we contribute from the Foresters building, but we also are putting $14 million into our housing reserve fund as a result of the sale of a surplus city asset. And hopefully that will be concluded soon. I also want to pay testament to Councillor Rick Weaver. Councillor Rick Weaver, I think of as the founder of the Feast with respect to housing initiatives in the city of Brantford. Rick has left us because of health issues, and he's left a legacy behind with respect to providing affordable housing in this community that I and the members of the rest of City Council are trying to live up to in his absence. And we have seen some very, very positive results from our efforts. I'll point to Marlene Ave as a good indication of some supportive housing that we've done, which is improving lives day by day, one at a time. We have a commitment to be building on Colbert Street, hopefully before the year is out. ANC has produced the modular units, and hopefully we'll get beyond the speed bump that we've encountered with respect to site issues. And most exciting of all is the project that we're going to be undertaking in Paris on Grand River Street next to our seniors building. And I'm looking very much forward to the day when the two mayors can be putting a shovel in the ground there and getting underway with that as well. And again, a testament to our cooperation with the County of Brant, our partners for many, many years. So thank you all. It's going to be a good morning. These events really are important to the community, important to you, important to me. And let's all try and have some fun and learn something this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary, and thank you for reminding us of Rick Weaver's contributions. That's very important for us to remember. We're going to move on the agenda to the Housing and Homelessness Services update. And there are a number of management team members that I will introduce as part of that presentation. So along with me this morning is Anthony Duchetti, who's our manager of housing stability, and Mary Musson, who's our acting manager of housing programs. And together we'll be doing this presentation on our housing and homelessness services. So again, we want to remind you, National Housing Day, it's a day of celebration. Each year we give you an update on the activities that we as a service manager for housing and homelessness for the city of Brant and the county of Brant, city of Brantford and the county of Brant. We have been involved over the last year. So this is our update. We have a presentation this morning to highlight the plans that help us guide our activities, the Housing and Homelessness Services team, and the 3 program areas. So we've got the Housing Stability Services, Housing Programs, and Housing Operations. And then some of the accomplishments that have happened this year. So first I'll start with the plans that inform our work. there are several plans, and the first one and the biggest one, the overarching plan basically, is the Housing Stability 10-year plan. It goes from 2014 to 2024. It was updated in 2019, that's the 5-year mark, and 6 new broad goals have been established with that update. They encompass the previous goals that had been developed back in 2014, but now we've got the 6, and I'm just going to read them because they're really important to remind us what these are the goals that we have across the community. So increasing and preserving affordable housing options. There's no point building more if we're not also preserving the supply we already have. Number 2, providing holistic prevention and support services. Number 3, strengthening collaboration and coordination. Number 4, strengthening partnerships and collaboration with Indigenous service providers. Number 5, improving systems, planning and measurement. And number 6, reducing chronic homelessness. And we do an annual update every year in June of this plan so that you can see the progress from year to year. One of the outcomes of the Housing Stability Plan was to set some targets. And these are the 2 targets that were set. 506, you'll hear that number quite a lot of times. 506 municipally developed new affordable housing units over those for a 10-year period. And then also 337 units developed by others, because clearly the municipality is not the only one that can develop. We have other partners and community members that we want to also involve in doing this together. We need both municipal and others working together to make this happen. We then had a municipal housing master plan that was approved in 2019. And that was really taking that target of 506 municipally developed units and how are we going to make that happen? So we've got a 10-year period, 2020 and 2030, and we're going to give you an update on where we are on that target. But that really helps us give direction to how we're going to create those units and through a series of developments over this 10-year period. And then lastly, the major area that we are using to guide our direction is the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force and their Affordable Housing Action Plan. So they were created back in 2019, and their goal was to accelerate the process for the municipality and others to reach that goal. So to help make these units happen, how can we do this more quickly? And what kind of things can be done to remove some of the barriers? The task force met in 2020, and they had several teams, and we'll be seeing some of the outcome of that. So the inventory mapping team, the financial options team, the mentorship program team, the joint application team, and the industry partner team. So those were the different teams that were set up. They worked over the year 2000, and then they had a final report in January 2021. And then we are doing annual updates every year. We're combining the annual update for the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force Affordable Housing Action Plan is combined now with the Municipal Housing Master Plan. There's a bit of a mouthful to say all of that in one sentence, but we're merging those 2 plans in our updates annually. And there'll be a report in December to give that annual update. This might help. I know I work better with pictures to kind of see how all these plans fit in. We've got a whole bunch of other plans, but so the overarching plan that is guiding us is the Housing Stability Plan. And then all the other plans fit underneath that. So we've got you'll see on the left of the slide, the master plan and the housing action plan, affordable housing action plan, where they fit in. We also have some homelessness plans and some activity that's happening on that side to help guide us to reach those 6 important goals on the Housing Stability Plan. So just to help you sort of see how they fit together. Thanks. And then you may have seen this housing continuum before. People don't necessarily move through the continuum in a orderly one step at a time, but people do move back and forth between these different housing options. And we are working to make sure that all housing options across the continuum are encouraged. We have 3 teams within the Housing and Homelessness Services. One is our housing operations side, our housing program side, and our housing stability side. And we'll talk a little bit about what each of those areas does and what they do, what they bring today in terms of an update. Our housing operations manages all of our local properties. The housing program team manages a number of programs, and Mary will update that. And housing stability joined our department in late 2020. So it was in a different department before, but now it's merged with our housing, and now we have a joint housing and homelessness department. And they are responsible for supporting the city's strategy to prevent and end homelessness. So we're going to start with the homelessness services, and Anthony Ducetti will take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb, and welcome to everyone this morning. Pleasure to have you here. I do believe we're supposed to have a PowerPoint presentation. We're just experiencing some technical difficulties right now. But I will start with my update from the housing stability side of things. So first and foremost, in April of 2021, so of this year, our community conducted a point in time survey, so a point in time count as we call it. This survey is designed to enumerate the number of people that are experiencing homelessness within our community on any specific night. So on the day we hosted that point in time count, it was determined that roughly 238 people were experiencing homelessness in our community. From that data, we were able to identify that 2 out of 3 individuals identified as male. 62% of those of the 238 were between the ages of 25 and 55. Approximately 36 self-identified as Indigenous. 46% first experiencing homelessness as a youth. 58% identified being homeless for 6 months or more within the past year, and 86% identified that they had been living in Brantford, for a year or more. So how we're coming to serve this population better. To support our clients, we are delivering what is known as a coordinated access system. So what that means and what that refers to, a coordinated access system refers to streamlining of local homelessness and related support services to effectively prioritize the needs of our most vulnerable to assist with housing stability, as well as facilitate more efficient access to different supports that are also available locally. Our coordinated access system is referred to as the Brantford Brant Homeless System of Care, and includes agencies such as the City's Social Services, the Housing Resource Center, community emergency shelter providers, transitional housing providers, housing agencies, and street outreach providers. So beginning in April of 2019, Brantford set out to become a designated reaching home community under Canada's National Housing Strategy. As part of this agreement, Brantford is required to have all of the main components of the coordinated access system, which I've referenced, in place by March 31st of 2022. That being said, through consultations within our homeless serving sector and community advisory board, it was determined that the implementation of our coordinated access system would be completed in 3 phases. So phase 1 included the enhanced inflow and entry point management processes. So that's how we're getting clients into our system, getting them added to what we refer to as our by name list. Phase 2 focused on the provision of case planning and diversion services. So the most important thing with housing stability and homeless prevention is diversion. We actually launched a diversion pilot this past summer, and I will touch on some of those statistics that we've seen in the later slides. The final and last phase, phase 3, we examined the outflow processes and the delivery of prevention services. So ultimately, once folks come in, once services are wrapped around, phase 3 is getting them into permanent, suitable and sustainable housing. At this time, the majority of these processes have been refined and or developed, and we anticipate that our full coordinated access system will be fully operational and implemented by winter of 2022. So we will certainly be meeting that deadline that has been set out through the federal government. So our system has a clear process for entry through a decentralized model to receive services. This no wrong door approach ensures a person or family experiencing homelessness can go to any homeless serving organization to be assessed and complete initial intake. So when entering our system of care, the goal of entry point management and diversion is to learn about the individual's specific housing situation and to determine if safe alternatives to housing are available at this time. Whenever possible, the client is diverted from emergency shelter systems and accommodations and is provided with resources and supports that may help them. If the individual is unable to be diverted, the information collected during our entry to our system of care is obviously added to our by name list, which I've referenced. The BNL, as we like to refer to it, is a list of individuals currently experiencing homelessness in real time. Once added to this list, clients are prioritized based on community priorities that are reviewed annually and set out, with permanent housing being the end goal, with wraparound support attached if necessary. So some of the community support services and supports that we have here within the county and city. We have outreach services, diversion and prevention services. We have 4 agencies providing emergency shelter accommodation with 70 beds in that system. Housing with supports, so that's 2 agencies and 50 beds. We are connected with our shelter health outreach teams. So that's including our BDOT team, which is our Brantford Downtown Outreach team. And through the Grand River Community Health Center, we have our refreshment cart station and shower station. And stationed at the library, we have our library outreach worker and program, as well as access to the community legal clinic. So a few bright spots. What we call transition to housing. Our community works collaboratively to support individuals to transition to housing, obviously, through the Housing Resource Center as the lead agency that provides case management supports. So between January and September of this past year, approximately 1,393 service transactions occurred to support families to obtain housing. And there have been at least 109 transitions from housing to housing from homelessness. As mentioned previously, we did launch our diversion pilot this past summer to help individuals find safe alternatives to housing rather than entering our system as a whole. So between March to September, services were offered, so the diversion services were offered approximately 555 times. And in September alone, more than half, 53.3%, were successfully diverted from shelter services. So if you look at that graphic there, from the launch of that pilot, we can see that the successful diversion actually increased quite drastically. Moving on with the bright spots, homeless prevention services have helped clients retain their housing through housing stability funding and case management. So between January to September of 2021, at least 1,475 service transactions have occurred to support families at risk of homelessness. So that's it for housing stability updates for the past year. I will throw it over to my colleague, Mary Musson, for an update on housing programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. So we have quite a change in context over the last 12 months. There has been new legislation introduced, as well as changes made to existing legislation that has impacted the way the city of Brantford delivers services. Over the next couple minutes, we would like to share the impacts of these changes and show the community how we've adapted to each change. So some of the specific legislative changes relate to Bill 184, Bill 204, and the rent geared to income simplification, which is the new Ontario Regulation 316 of 19. So with Bill 184, the Housing Services Act changes do include a more streamlined legislative framework to grow community housing in order to fix the complexities and confusion of current rules. Current and new housing providers can now voluntarily enter into service agreements with their service managers when they reach their expiry of agreement or end of mortgage, or they can exit. These regulations will provide clarity on how this can be done, as well as provide baseline requirements or minimum standards for those who continue under the new framework. The Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the MMAH, can issue directives on how these projects are administered, and service managers will be required to publicly maintain lists of these housing providers who are within the new framework. Protect community housing by defining the rules and process for housing providers to exit the system at end of agreement or exit or end of mortgage. These exit agreements will meet the baseline rules and requirements to address the protection of tenants and public investments in community housing, with a joint notice with their service managers to the minister. These housing providers would then be removed from the current legislation. The bill also looks at modernizing service level standards. The service level standards accountability is a measure of the required minimum number of rent geared to income assisted units provided within a service manager area. These have not been updated for over 20 years. So the changes will now broaden the type of housing assistance that can be counted towards these required service levels and propose a modern outcomes-based approach to accountability and the service level standards in the regulations. We are also looking at improving access to systems. The current requirement is to have a coordinated access system in place to manage access to rent geared to income assisted units, so the local housing wait list. In the future access systems, they could include other types of housing assistance, such as portable benefits and supportive affordable housing. There will be baseline rules for eligibility and priority for prescribed types of housing assistance. Consistent local eligibility rules. Currently, each service manager area can set local eligibility rules for household income limits and asset limits. This has created some inconsistency across Ontario, which can be problematic for households needing or who choose to move to another community. The contemplated regulation changes would create consistency across the province following consultation with service managers, housing providers, and sector partners. With Bill 184 for the Residential Tenancies Act, the intention of the legislative changes is to strengthen protections for tenants, making it easier to be a landlord and help both landlords and tenants resolve disputes. The RTA changes will increase fines for unlawful evictions and reinforce the necessity for landlords to explore repayment agreements before considering evictions. The changes to the Residential Tenancies Act include the following goals: preventing unlawful evictions and allowing landlord-tenant board adjudicators to look for patterns and identify landlords who may be breaking the law. Compensate tenants for no-fault evictions with requirements to offer compensation when tenants are evicted for causes beyond their control. Increase compensation for bad faith evictions when tenants who are evicted due to repairs or renovations but are not able to move back, or when the eviction is for the landlord's personal use but houses another instead. Increase maximum fines for an individual or corporation convicted of an offense under the Act. These will be increases from $25,000 to $50,000 for an individual and from $100,000 to $250,000 for a corporation. Streamline landlord-tenant board processes by not requiring landlords to go back to the landlord-tenant board for an eviction when a negotiated settlement is breached by a tenant. Also, to require tenants to give advance notice of any new tenancy issues prior to a hearing date in order to prevent hearing delays and postponements. Make it easier to be a landlord by having issues such as damages or rent disputes for former tenants handled by the landlord-tenant board rather than small claims court. And allow greater flexibility for employers to provide employee housing. Allow landlords to recover costs by applying to the landlord-tenant board instead of evicting tenants for bad behavior. Update land lease and mobile home rules in order to maintain health and safety and perform necessary maintenance. And also to provide more tools for better enforcement of Residential Tenancies Act offenses. These changes specify how the new legislative provisions will work in terms of direct service delivered to communities all across Ontario. With Bill 204, the Government of Ontario passed legislation to freeze rent at 2020 levels with no rent increases in 2021. This was done to help rental households and businesses who may have suffered a loss of income due to the pandemic. The city adapted to this change by taking into consideration the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, when calculating interim and annual reviews. Households remained housed despite changes to their income due to the pandemic. With rent geared to income simplifications, changes were made to simplify the calculation of RGI assistance. These changes came into effect as of July 1st, 2021. The RGI calculation will be a simplified annual process based on 30% of adjusted family net income determined when possible by the household members' net income amounts in their notices of assessment for the relevant tax year. This is subject to certain adjustments. Individuals no longer have to submit pay stubs and multiple documents to validate their income. This makes calculating rent much simpler for service managers and for housing providers. It also makes it easier for tenants to understand, and they no longer need to submit multiple documents for proof of income. Under the new RGI simplification, a review of a household's RGI rent must be conducted every 12 months. In-year reviews may only be completed under specific circumstances, such as a permanent change in household composition, a decrease in income of 20%, or a change in full-time student status. And households will no longer be required to report an increase in income before their next annual review. All household members in full-time studies will now have their income exempt from the rent calculation, removing the existing conditions attached to this exemption. For household members who work, the new system will continue to exempt $75 or $150 per month of a family unit employment income, depending on their family size, but will simplify the criteria to determine that amount. Minimum rent will be increased and indexed with the province's annual rent increase guideline, subject to phase-in for existing tenants paying less than indexed minimum rent. Household members whose income is to be included in the rent calculation will be required to file their income tax returns annually as a condition of continued eligibility, subject to the service manager discretion in extenuating circumstances. The length of time that RGI households can pay market rent before losing eligibility for assistance will be extended from 12 months to 24 consecutive months. And consequential changes are also being made to align, where appropriate, the portable housing benefit rules with the new RGI calculation rules. So with a bright spot for staying housed, we have 3 programs we would like to highlight. With the City of Brantford and the County of Brant, the Be Home program has been developed to assist low to moderate income earners realize their dream of owning their first home. In 2021, there were 10 applications that were received and processed. The purpose of the Be Home ownership program is to make first-time home ownership a reality for low to moderate income households in Brantford Brant. Also to ease the demand for rental housing by assisting renter households to buy affordable houses. We offer down payment assistance for home buyers through a 5% forgivable loan to a maximum of $20,000. We encourage developers to build affordable housing. With 10 applications received and processed, we have 10 households who've made owning a home a reality for first-time home buyers. Under the Ontario Renovates program, if you own a home and it needs to be repaired or modified, you can apply to the Ontario Renovates program. We can help install accessibility features like ramps, bath pits, or alarms, and this program is funded by the federal and provincial governments through the Investment in Affordable Housing, or IAH program. A limited amount of funding is available every year, and so far in 2021, the City of Brantford has helped 16 households receive funding to renovate their homes. The Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit, or COB, is a program that is a portable rental benefit intended to benefit thousands of households all across Ontario. Once qualifying applicants are approved for enrollment in the COHB program, the ongoing housing benefit will be administered and delivered by the province directly to the recipient. The new Canada-Ontario housing benefit represents the expansion of a portable housing subsidy program, enabling approved recipients to move anywhere in Ontario and keep their shelter benefit. The funding allows existing portable housing benefit recipients approved through the special priority program to maintain their subsidy and potentially add up to 80 local applicant households to the portable benefit model. In addition, some existing housing benefit clients from other expiring programs may be able to transition over to this program. The program has been a very welcome addition to providing varied affordable housing solutions for citizens in Brantford and Brant County. In addition, the program does support the goals and expected outcomes of the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing by helping to increase affordable rental capacity in the community. There are currently 10 active participants in 2021 with this program. It is very important to highlight that the B Homes, the Ontario Renovates, do get funding through federal and provincial funding, and that the Canada-Ontario housing benefit is provincially funded. So one of our bright spots, the Livewell Brantford Brand program. A quick background. A total of 179 affordable housing units are currently either completed or at various stages of development to add to the much needed inventory of housing that our community needs. 5 Marlene Avenue in Brantford was part of this master plan and has had significant progress in its programming since it was built. The Livewell Brantford Brand program provides housing support with links to support services for people with high needs. The program focuses on housing and supporting those in the community who may otherwise be homeless. The Brantford Brand Livewell program provides housing-focused support that includes linking individualized and flexible support services for people with high needs related to physical or mental health, developmental disabilities, or substance use. Clients involved with this program have experienced repeated or chronic homelessness, and the program focuses on following the Housing First philosophy of homelessness prevention. Housing First outcomes have shown that providing safe, affordable housing with access to health and social services will yield positive health outcomes and reduction in the use of costly emergency care for individuals coping with complex physical and mental health conditions. This program is funded by the city in partnership with the province's Home for Good program. There are 30 RGI units at 5 Marlene Avenue. The occupancy date for 5 Marlene was June 2020. The associated program funding does include rent supplements to bridge the difference between average market rent and maximum shelter allowance for recipients of Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program. So in 2021, the staff conducted a survey measuring the quality of life for clients in the Livewell Brantford Brand program. We wanted to gather anonymous qualitative data on their experience in their program, and residents had the option of completing a voluntary survey. We received 29 surveys back, with the majority of survey questions voluntarily answered by all participants. Out of the responses, 21 people, or 72%, stated they were either unsheltered, in an emergency shelter, or couch surfing prior to entering the Livewell program. 4 were in transitional housing, and 2 residents were precariously housed prior to entering the program. The majority of respondents, 21, which was 72%, had experienced their housing status for over 1 year. A major highlight of the survey was the client's feelings of having seen a positive increase to their quality of life. After entering the Livewell Brantford Brand program, individuals on average reported feeling more physically and emotionally safe and connected to their community. They also reported feeling more optimistic about their future. These survey results let us know that linking tenants with support services and healthcare is making a positive difference in clients' lives and are helping them live healthier independently. Together, clients and Livewell Brantford Brand staff work together to foster growth, connection, accountability, and leadership through their community garden. Additional partnerships are being fostered with the Brantford Brand community. This is seeing provision of services on site at both 5 Marlene Avenue and at the Winston Court housing site. Some examples of these partnerships include the Grand River Community Health Centre, the RAM Clinic, the SPCA, and Liver Care Canada.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to be covering the housing operations update on behalf of the manager, Donna Kirchnoff. So just a bit of an overview about what housing is provided through the service manager for both the city and county. We have what we call our family units. There are 34 buildings that are specifically directed for families, 11 townhouses, 13 single detached, 8 semi-detached, and 1 multi-res building. But we also have units for other populations. And so our senior buildings, we have 9 buildings that are senior specific, 8 multi-res apartments and 1 semi-detached. And we have 5 buildings that are specific to adults that are not seniors. So these are single or couples that are non-seniors. These are 5 apartment buildings that are located in the city of Brantford. So the important part, we remember back to that housing stability plan, maintaining and keeping buildings in good state of repair that are already in our system. That includes, I mean, the city is a housing provider like some of our other nonprofit and co-op housing providers in the community. And our focus is on making sure our buildings stay in good condition. The way that we do this is we do a building condition assessment every year on each property. Sorry, not every year, every 5 years on each property. And that helps us plan for the capital repair work over the next 5 to 10 years. So the next slide shows a little bit about sort of the numbers. So here you've got our value of our assets, over 30 million. That's our current supply. We did complete BCAs in 2021, so we have a better sense of sort of the next 5 to 10 years of repairs and replacements that are going to be needed. And this helps to ensure that we are up to date on our asset inventory. So we've predicted what our capital plan and cost could be for the next 10 years, given these repairs and replacements that are needed. And you can see it's a big price tag, over $12 million. And the cost projection for just 2021 is $717,000. So significant when you've got lots of buildings, the cost, as particularly as buildings age, those costs increase. And these funds we have capital reserves for, but we also get some funding through the federal provincial COCHI funding, which is directed for capital repairs. So now I want to move on to new development and what is happening on the new development side. This is goes back, as you remember, we talked about the Municipal Housing Master Plan and the target of having 506 units developed over that 10-year period. So this is counting 30 units that Mary talked about at Marlene Avenue have already been completed. So 30 units are checked off the list. We have 4 more units we'll talk a little bit more about at 18 Sturton that will be completed by the end of this year. That's very exciting information. The other ones are in various stages of development. And altogether, you'll see we've got some at Coburn, and we've got a development at 170 Trillium Way, and we've got one at 345 Sheltered Lane that are all in, we're projecting getting them in the pipeline for development over the next couple of years. The number here adds up to 179. So clearly, we still have a few more to go to get to that goal of 506. Another 327 units to complete. So we'll be working on lining up the sites for the next years after this to accomplish the next 327 units. Exciting news about 18 Sturton is that we do have an official opening and open house this Friday at 3:30 in person at 18 Sturton Avenue. And if you're interested in that, you'll need to let us know to register if you want a tour of those particular units. So this is the bright spot we want to show you is 18 Sturton. Now, this was what we call a demonstration project for our CASE home. So CASE home stands for compact, affordable, sustainable, and efficient. And this is a pilot kind of concept to encourage alternative and creative construction and building practices to achieve low construction costs and to expedite the building process. So modular construction through Andrew Neil Construction, ANC, was chosen as the units could be built off-site to minimize disruption of the neighborhood and then could be assembled quickly on the site when all the site work was completed. So you can see here some pictures of the site work that was done as soon as it was ready. The modular units had already been sitting ready, completed in the factory, and they could be brought on site with a crane, assembled quickly on site, and within a very short time frame, we have those buildings now in place, assembled. Here is a sort of an artist rendition of the concept from when we were at the concept stage. So it's a 4-plex studio units. They're small size, 330 square feet. So they're not large units, but they are the 4-plex looks like one sort of larger building in a residential neighborhood and fits in with the neighbors that way. And then the last picture I have here is the units now on site. This is from the backs of the property. There's been more work done since then. There's grass that's been put in place. There's been trees that are planted. There's sidewalks that are in place, and there'll be a driveway paved, I believe, tomorrow in time for the official opening on Friday. So very exciting to see this. We're hoping to have occupancy by mid-December and have tenants being able to move into this unit off of the wait list and housing. So this is our overview of what has been happening across this year in all of our different program areas. You will note that we do like our short terms use of things, and we will not test you on that, but we have a lot of short form words that we use in the housing world that we are familiar with. And at some point we'll maybe have a glossary of terms that we can hand out that explain all those different terms to you. So thanks again. That's our presentation on our update. Thanks, Mary and Anthony, for supporting me in that. But the real emphasis of today is our last portion of our event today is to really focus on the people who are using the buildings and the homes that are being provided and hearing from them regarding how the housing impacts them and their lives. So our theme today is a place to call home. And we want to focus on why that is important. So I know for myself, when I hear the term home, it evokes different images for me. And each person, it'll be different depending on your previous experience and your current life situation. For many people, the word symbolizes a warm, caring, nurturing place where you feel loved, accepted, and safe. There are many songs and movies that focus on this theme, but for many of our citizens, this image of home is a distant reality from what they are currently experiencing. So today's theme is affordable housing, a place to call home, to remind us what a difference having a home makes, and of the many people who are still waiting to find a place to call home. Members of our community and collective family who live unsheltered, or in our emergency shelter system, or couch surfing with friends and family, or fleeing domestic violence, or living in institutions, all looking for that place to call home that is safe, affordable, where they can rebuild relationships and a sense of belonging. So today we're going to hear a story from someone who has been able to find this home and how it has impacted her life. And we're going to ask Kelly Dubois, who's joining us, I believe, by phone. Kelly, we're so happy to have you involved in our event today, and we're welcome to you, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I'm very honored to be here today.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kelly. You can share your thoughts and your ideas.
Well, first of all, like I said, I'm really honored to actually to be able to speak to everybody about, you know, my experiences and everything else. I know 5 years ago, I ran into a little bit of a low point in my life where I got evicted from my landlord's place because of poor conditions. He didn't like the fact that I was standing up for myself, and I was, what you recalled earlier, was a couch surfer. Both me and my son, we didn't have anywhere to go. It was extremely embarrassing for me because there had never been the situation where I ended up calling Nova Vita. And we stayed there for a few months, and I didn't know anything about affordable housing. I just knew that I felt lost, and it, again, the worst feeling in the world. But I found out that we were accepted into affordable housing, and all of a sudden, the best feeling of the world. My son was able to, you know, breathe again. I can give my son everything he requires. At the same time, it was close to his birthday, so it was kind of like a birthday gift for him. He said it was the best birthday gift in the world. I had been here for almost 5 years, and it has literally changed our lives. My son is happy. He's healthy. He's made so many good friends. My house, I've always wanted it to be safe. I want to be a place, you know, where you can just be yourself. And to me, it's like, it's an emotional connection to me. Like, my home is my happy place, mentally, spiritually, physically. You get to meet all new people, you get to have friends, and it's the only place you'll ever have privacy. Like, no matter what goes on in the world, you know you can always go home. And the saying is, home is where the heart is, and it's the honest to God truth. Home is where the heart is. And I will always be forever thankful and grateful for affordable housing, because without it, I don't know where I would be. The staff here at my building are amazing. They know every child's name, every pet name. They got a personal connection with you as well. So I'm forever safe. I feel completely safe and just happy to be here. And like I said, I will never forget what help and guidance the housing department gave to me. So ever since, I've been trying extremely hard to see how I can give back to the community for helping me. I'm just not too sure how yet.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's so heartening to hear how much your life has improved for not just yourself, but for also your son in the last 5 years. And we're happy to hear that you have found that home. And thank you for sharing with us. That's really delightful to hear from you. So
I believe that everyone deserves, it doesn't matter what your situation is, everyone deserves a safe place. You know, like, I've never had substance abuse or alcohol abuse or anything like that. I just unfortunately was kind of homeless at the time. But no matter what your situation is, I do believe that what you guys are doing to help our community to give more affordable housing, I think it's amazing, completely amazing.
yeah, thanks again. And I think your resilience and your parenting has shown that you are a strong person, and you were able to find that solution for yourself and your son. So we're happy to hear that the story has a happy ending for you. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Kelly.
Thank you.
Our key presentation this morning is with our Indigenous members of our community. And I will be introducing Renee Hill to speak on behalf of Brant Native Housing. But just to give a bit of some background, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls for action provides a compelling picture of the initial and the essential steps that towards healing past and current injustices. The recent discoveries at residential schools of children's burial sites are a vivid reminder of those who were removed from their homes and communities and never return, as well as a reminder of the children and the families who survived and continue to live with generational trauma. Part of reconciliation is learning and listening. What does home look like for our Indigenous community members? So we've invited Renee Hill, the Executive Director with Brant Native Housing, to speak about what home means and ways that we can help create home for Indigenous people in our affordable housing communities and beyond. So thank you, Renee, for joining us. Over to you. We have to unmute. Yeah, there.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just probably to start off, my screen froze about 10 minutes ago. So if I have connections issues, I apologize. I'd like to say thank you to the Housing Department, Brantford staff. They've been really helpful to me as I transitioned here at Brantford Native Housing. They've welcomed us with open arms and helped us in any query that I had, and I think it's a great partnership that's happening right now. I also want to thank you for providing me with this forum today. I'd like to start out by saying that I'd like to acknowledge 6 Nations of the Grand River community and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation as your neighbors. I don't profess to speak for anyone in terms of, I don't speak for the community in Brantford. All I can tell you is share my experiences and my knowledge and the path that it has taken me. And when Deb had asked, would I speak today? And then I was like, well, and then it was like, yeah, Renee, do it. So here we go. So when you talk about home for the people that I know, it's not even a physical place, it's people. So in terms of, for us, the home, it's our moms, it's our grandmas, it's our aunties. That whole sense of that's your home, and wherever they are, that's where your home is. For us, in terms of that's who makes us feel safe, and that's who provides for us. It's not your nuclear family, it's a larger family, and that's your immediate family. And with COVID happening, it really had an impact on us, especially because what we do, I know for me, is we gather and we eat. And we weren't able to do that during COVID, and it was a challenge for us. So in terms of how we do things is a lot centered around family. And it's not only the home, it's everything that involved with your family. It is food security, it's employment, it's education, it's justice, it's health. All of that needs to be well for the family to be well. And it often falls on our moms and our aunties and our grandmas to do that. I think probably the one, in terms of the one story that I think about, in terms of we were riding in a car, and my brother's firstborn, she was 2 years old at the time, and my mother was in the car, and she was driving, and we were going along, and she says to my mom, she says, Grandma, she says, this is my dad. She says, yes. And then she says, and you're dad's mommy? And she says, yes. And she says, but Grandma, but you're the boss of all of us, right? And we said, yeah. And that's kind of how the family is, right? In terms of, that's where the aunties take that role, the moms move to grandma roles. So in terms of, that's kind of what home is for us. And so when you're trying to think of understanding who you serve, that's part of that understanding of who we are, what we are, and how we operate. So that family, that extended big unit, is really real in terms of how we look at relationships, and in terms of how we look at all of our relationships. I read an article, they said, you know, my brother's children and my children, they don't consider themselves first cousins. They consider themselves sisters and brothers, and their children aren't cousins. Those are nieces and nephews. So in terms of it, it's a really close, interconnected family relationships. And that whole, in terms of your immediate family can be anywhere from 18 to 30 people. And then when you have a larger gathering, it's 100 people minimum. Like I remember those going to my birthday parties for my grandfather. They were huge, and it wasn't the place, it was about the family. And it was like there was food and you felt safe. So in terms of for the family unit, the home that's what it is that you're together and you feel safe. When that doesn't happen, that's where those challenges come in. And part of that feeling safe is all of those issues in terms of food security, you know, health security, in terms of justice security, education security. Do they have that? Do we have the right to feel safe? And it goes back to our history. When you think about us as a people, we didn't feel safe in terms of when you go back in terms of intergenerational trauma is a real thing. It's not only the residential school, but home wasn't a safe place because that's where you had to run from because someone was coming to take your children. So in terms of it has even a larger impact for us in terms of we had to protect against people coming. And it still kind of exists in today's society. So in terms of who we are, who are you serving? That's where in terms of, so when you have Brantford Native Housing, we understand those communities, we understand those relationships with those people, the tenants and the community at large, because we do have varying degrees of different families. You have Indigenous people that are homeowners in the city in terms of they're contributing to your tax base. They're part of your economy. So in terms of what makes you know, the home important is that it makes those family relationships really important, that everyone that everyone feels safe. So I think more of just understanding that, and then the home itself has the history of trauma, and you know, I could probably spend all day talking about that, but I won't. But in terms of that's kind of where we go back to mom, auntie, grandma. So if that's in a good place, your family is in a good place. And in terms of what are those supports there in terms of how are they delivered? How can they be offered? How do we offer a better sense of community, of home? I think for me, I know in terms of operating in an urban setting, just make sure that you see me. All too often, our community is invisible and we're not heard. And we all know those stories, right? In terms of when you go line up at the bank and then it's your turn and then they close or they don't see you, or you're in the store and they don't see you. So in terms of, I think probably as we just be more aware of our surroundings in terms of who's there and who's needing help. I think that's where in terms of, that's where you get your better sense of community. That's where you get your better sense of how do we help everyone. In terms of we have a huge portion of our community that suffers, you know, in terms of they don't have they're underserved, they're marginalized, mental health issues, addictions, and it's not just one person. It can be intergenerational. In terms of, again, we can talk all day about that, but that touches on it, but we're all not there. but we're kind of all affected by it. So in terms of, there's huge issues that we're dealing with. It's not just the home, and we need all of those aspects of our life, of our family to be in check. So in terms of when we house a family, that's where, in terms of, that's just the first step, because now they want to get their kids in school, they want to get employment, they want to take that training. It's just one aspect of that larger family unit and the success of that family unit. So what happens is, when we can help them in supports of all of that, then that makes the family more successful, and that increases that sense of, this is a home, meaning it's a safe place to be and everything's going to be okay. And when that doesn't happen, that's where we say, what do we need? And unfortunately, nonprofits, we're under-resourced, we're understaffed, in terms of, again, I can talk all day about that, but I won't. But in terms of, we do what we can with what we have, and we try to help where we can. I think probably the main thing too is that our community, how many times do we have to tell our story? And sometimes, do we feel comfortable telling our story? Is it a safe place? And that, unfortunately, hasn't been the case with mainstream services. We don't feel it's a safe place to tell your story, because in terms of, we're not seen or heard, or we're seen and heard, but there's a certain perspective in terms of what happens. I was coming to work last month, and I pulled up, and the Brantford police stopped me. And stopped me right in front of the building, and they said I made a rolling stop at the stop sign. I don't recall doing that. We were having a meeting, and I was telling the other members, I said, I got stopped by the Brantford police. And their question was, was your car dirty? And I said, yeah. So in terms of there's just certain nuances that we have in the community, in terms of, we know in terms of how we've been treated, and we know when something is genuine, and we know when it's systemic. So in terms of, how do we get there? Let's have an open and honest conversation, in terms of the housing department in City of Brantford. They're quite aware of me being direct and open and honest about what's needed. So I think probably for us, in terms of, we need to do this together, I think is the main thing, in terms of, let's acknowledge what the problem is, and let's make a commitment to rectifying what we need to do together. I think probably being aware of your surroundings, in terms of, when you're there in the bank, when you're there on the street, being aware of what's being happening around you, and what's happening in that neighbor's place down the street, in terms of, is it okay? Do they feel safe? Because you may feel safe in yours, but your neighbor may not. I think in terms of, we're doing the work, and that's one of the things, that conversations that we did have for the city staff, was that, is it just Brantford Native Housing's job to house the Indigenous community? And we all agreed that the answer is no, in terms of, the Indigenous community is part of this community. And I think in terms of, the first step is understanding who we are. And then the second step is seeing us. And then the third step is say, okay, let's do this together. In terms of, what is it that we need? We won't tell that person in that city office, in terms of our background, we won't give them. We'll just say, I need help. And then if you don't qualify, they'll walk away. Then they'll come to us, then we'll get the full background. And we go A, B, and C. So in terms of, how do we correct that? That's going to be a work in progress too, because those are systemic processes that have been established. But I think probably this is a great step today, in terms of listening to, in terms of what happens for the Indigenous community in an urban setting, talking about housing, in terms of homelessness. We don't use the term homeless, but people have been sleeping on our couches for years, and we never say no to a family member in need of help. And I think probably when I heard the term in terms of having a permanent mailing address, and it was like, wow. It was like, I didn't even have a permanent mailing address for a long time. So I think probably just in terms of we're living in it, we're making it work. Is it working according to whose guidelines? And I think maybe that's part of it. Engaging right now, listening today. And, you know, what does safe mean? What does safe mean to the Indigenous community in terms of CAS isn't going to knock on my door and take my children. Brantford police aren't going to knock on my door and arrest me. Fire department isn't going to come and knock on my door and shut my house down. You know, Brantford Native Housing isn't going to come here and evict me. In terms of how many people really feel safe, and if we can work on that, doing that together and really engaging in the community, I think that's that first step. You know, these systemic systems weren't built overnight, and we can't tear them down overnight. But as we start that dialogue and talk about it, I think that's the beginning. It's going to be exciting, and where we can go, because we are having that dialogue. And one of the piece of exciting news that I do have is that we're getting to open up 2 transitional units on 13 Leonard Street. They're mobile units. They're going to be 2 bedroom. So right now we have what we refer to as O House, which is for women. It's for transitional home for women. We have K House, that's a transitional home for men. What we were finding was we would have a family, we would have a mom, dad, and kids, and they need help. And the only way we could help them is we'd have to split them up. We'd have to put the man at the men's house and the woman and the kids at O House. So now these transitional units, we're not going to have to split families up. They're going to be able to stay there for a year, you know, help them get on their feet. And I haven't touched base with my outreach workers, but I believe that we haven't even advertised it yet, and we're already getting calls in terms of people want to stay there. So it's exciting news. We're growing. We're getting there. You know, in terms of our housing stock, I believe in terms of we have, I think it's almost 180 tenancies. It's not structures, but tenancies, and the work that we're doing with the housing department, City of Brantford, it's really exciting because we're engaged, we're working together, we're helping each other. And thank you for listening today.
Thank you so much, Renee, for there's just a number of points that you have made that are really critical for us to hear and understand. So the whole aspect of safety and the importance of feeling safe is really what home is about. It's not the physical structure, it's that feeling of safety. That extended family support is also important. And you talked about housing being the foundation of all sorts of other things, sort of that stepping stone. If you have that safe, connected place, you can do other things around employment and education. It just sort of gives you that strong base. So thank you so much for sharing with us. And you have said 3 things. We need to understand you, we need to see you, and we need to work together. So those are really good 3 things for us to take away today. Part of reconciliation is to take what we observe and learn and put it into action. So in order to do this, we need to have deep and meaningful dialogue with our Indigenous citizens and groups, and with actions that are created and led by them. So we have a lot more work to do. Thank you for reminding us of what is already being done, Renee, and reminding us we still have lots to do. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
We are done the formal part of our event today. We have some time to handle questions. So we will see what kind of questions we have in the time left. If we don't have as many, we could end earlier, but we have enough time till 11 if need be. So We are so grateful that you have joined us today. This is exciting for me because I haven't seen a lot of people faces for a while. We've been covered up with masks, so you just see people's eyes, but this is great to see actual whole faces and your smiles. And we are thrilled that we are working together with you and making housing, continuing the housing we're already doing, but also growing our housing in many ways. So we have time for questions. If you have a question, you need to go to the participation icon on your screen and you click the hand button. So go to the participation icon at the bottom of your screen and click the hand icon if you have a question. We'll go in order, and when it's your turn, we will send you a message to unmute yourself, and then we will introduce you to ask your question. You can ask it to a specific person if you want, or it could be a general question and we'll figure out who can answer that. But why don't we go to our first question? Brian, you are our first question. Go ahead, Brian.
I thought I would just do the icebreaker, but it looks like Mary Lou's got a question. Maybe I'll stand down so Mary Lou asks, and then I thought I'd warm up the crowd. Mary Lou, do you want to go before me? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure, we'll let Mary Lou go first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. This was very enlightening for me, certainly. I'm actually participating here as a group with a group of people from the Grand River Council on Aging. So I'm here to ask a question, actually to make a comment and then to ask a question. First of all, I want to say that the Grand River Council on Aging, our mandate is to support seniors, elders in our community, which of course is a vulnerable population. For many seniors are living in vulnerable circumstances. Also, though, of course, it's not just seniors who are living in vulnerable circumstances. So many of the issues for seniors are reflected in the issues of others with exceptionalities and disabilities. So I know that you spoke very briefly about the inventory you have of senior residences, but there's a lot happening in the area of housing for seniors. And we're just curious about whether or not there's been consideration around things like looking at NORCs, which of course is a beautiful acronym, another of the many acronyms that were used today, and I'm still learning the language myself. But the NORCs being the non-organized resident communities, which is where people come together because they have something in common and they live in an apartment building, largely maybe seniors, and services are then delivered to them in those environments. Has there been any work done in that area? But also the other sort of part B question to my question is that we're really concerned about the ability of people to navigate the system of accessing all of these things. You've presented a range of services, a range of things that are happening in our community, but how do people really know about those things and how do people really access them? That brings to the point an issue of navigation. And I know when you were talking about homelessness, you had a very clear sort of navigational pathway. But in terms of the broader issue of housing for people, we're concerned about that. And the final point I want to make on that is that communities like Peterborough and Ottawa have done some really good work around the whole issue of navigation, helping citizens, whatever age and stage they are in their life, navigate the services that are available to help them access the things that are happening in their community. So I guess to sort of summarize, we're the Grand River Council on Aging. And just on that note, want to make you aware that we're here to help and we'd love to partner with you in whatever way we can to bring that voice to the table. But in addition, we'd like to know a little bit more about what you might have in mind with respect to navigation and specifically what kinds of services you might be envisioning around seniors. So that's my summary. Thanks.
Wow, those are good questions. I will attempt to try to answer those and others can join in if they have some other pieces to add. But you're right. We know there's shifting demographics, and we know population changing over time. We'll be having more seniors in our communities. And so what we currently have in our own housing stock, and you have to remember, we also have other housing providers, our nonprofits and co-ops that also provide housing for seniors. That stock, you're right, may not be enough for the future. So the one thing we're doing now is we're building, the new units that we're building tend to be 1-bedroom buildings. And then they might be used for one demographic now, like the non-senior couples and singles, but they can easily be transitioned to use for seniors because they want the same type of unit, that 1-bedroom unit. So we're looking at ways of creating that flexibility, what our needs are now, and building for what our needs will be in the future. So the stock we create now has to have that flexibility. I like your new acronym. I haven't heard that one before, NORCS. But we're open to all ideas. I think at this point, any idea is a good idea for us to explore. Years ago, we never heard of container housing. We never heard of modular housing. I mean, these are all newer ideas that have come forth that we are exploring. So we're open to conversations about that. I know people are exploring things like co-housing. That's a new way of kind of trying to find an opportunity to get into the housing market by joining two family households together, perhaps. So there's a lot of new ideas, and we are not the only ones who have our finger on the pulse. You do too. So we're open to hearing those ideas from all of you. The second question was around navigation, and you're right. Navigation is probably the one thing I get the most calls about. Mary and Anthony get the most calls about is, where do we go? This is our issue, and how do we get from here to there? We do have two main places that we try to navigate from. So one is the Housing Resource Center, is where we direct people who are looking for housing today and need to find something now, like they're real urgent, they're at risk of homelessness or they're experiencing homelessness. We direct people to the Housing Resource Center to help navigate them into either a shelter or into some sort of a housing option. So that is where we direct people who are needing housing immediately. Where we direct people who are thinking more long-term, that want to get into affordable housing, is we direct them to our affordable housing waiting list, apply for that, get in line, because it takes time to get your name to the top of the list. So think ahead. If you're looking at, your situation is going to be changing and you can see that your income might not be sufficient to cover your rent, you're going to need some help for affordability. It's more of a longer term plan. Apply for affordable housing. It's all on the website. To access us, all of our forms are web-based. You can access, you can complete the form, send it in, submit it all electronically. So it's a very easy system. And for those special problem-solving ones where they're really complicated and nobody knows where to go, that's what the team here is about. We do a lot of, this person has some very unique challenges, a very unique situation. What can we help them with? And so we get very creative around those kind of things. I don't know if that helps, Mary Lou. Yeah. Unmute. Okay.
Sorry, I muted myself there. I just wanted to listen to your response. I appreciate your response. I think we would really like the opportunity to maybe be more involved in a conversation with you about some of the specifics around seniors housing and some of the, not just sort of creating the bricks and mortar, but also the whole notion of aging in place, because many seniors prefer to age in place. And there are supports that can be, just through the municipality that can aid in that doing. So I guess the point I just want to end on is we are here and we would really like the opportunity to be involved with you and to talk more about some of the options that we're seeing in our circles that other communities are doing to support seniors. But again, as I mentioned, what's often good for seniors, which as you correctly point out, is the largest and fastest growing demographic, is also often good for others. So if we put ourselves out there to partner with you and would like that opportunity. So thanks for your response, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so we'll reach out and make some connections, and we can connect and work from there. Thank you so much. Okay,
So I saw Lucy's hand up, but she put it down. So Lucy, were your questions answered?
I just was going to clarify the NORCs. It's actually naturally occurring retirement communities. And all of your inventory, they are naturally occurring retirement communities because people are aging. They age from the day they start. And as your tenants go through their life, whatever their life is going to be, things will change. So there are, as Mary Lou pointed out, we are aware of a lot of things that are going on across the province and other communities, how they're trying to address some of these things. And there are some options that we'd love to have an opportunity to talk to you. So that's really where I was coming from. It's age-friendly community is all ages, 5 to 105, and we're all aging. And there are things that people can learn as they go. And remember, 75% of your population is not involved with affordable housing. They are the rest of the residents, and they're aging. So there are things that we can talk to you about. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much. We have some other questions, or we can go back to Brian.
Go, Brian.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. It was mentioned during the meeting or the presentation about an open house at the Sturton development. Is there a sign-up sheet to take a tour for that? I'd love to go through our organization, which is Sensity Deafblind and Sensory Support Network of Canada. We're based in Paris, and we're engaged in some talks with ANC Modular about piloting housing for the individuals we support. And it would be great to see the finished product. We've seen it in development, but
Brian, I can send you the flyer that gives you the connection. Anybody who's interested, if you could, why don't we just send the flyer out to everyone on the call today? And on the flyer is a way to register yourself if you want a tour. If you don't want a tour, you just want to show up, that's okay. If you want a tour, you have to register so we can book a time for you, because they're small units and we want to socially distance and keep everybody safe. Okay, we'll send that out for everybody. Thanks, Brian. Okay, you have any other?
We have Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, good morning, Deb, and thanks to you and your team for sharing what you shared earlier. I think it's something that we all need to understand in some detail. And I'm going to ask you a question that I've asked you before, so I'm sure you got the answer already. 506 dwellings is ambitious, and I love the ambition. But I think you and I both understood that keeps us at status quo. What is preventing us from being more ambitious?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think the 506 is a minimum. That's what we want to at least accomplish. But you're right. That is not going to move us forward. It's just going to keep us where we're currently at with population growth in terms of percentage population. So the one thing that is probably holding us back, actually there's a couple of things that are holding us back from going higher than 506 that we can maybe change, and so we can accomplish more. One is available land that is suitable for development of affordable housing. It is really difficult to find land that is not got a whole pile of problems or barriers to development. So if we can find the right land, that's the one big piece. And we're doing really well in our inventory. We've got an inventory of pieces of property, but as we go through each of those pieces of property, they all have significant barriers. So we don't have greenfield development anymore, where there's a piece of land that's just sitting there that's got no problems, that's already zoned and everything else. So that's one issue. And the other one I would say would be finances. As you know, it's expensive to build housing. It takes some financial costs. We have found a way to figure out how we can do the 506 units. If we want to do more, we will have to get more creative on where we're going to find those finances. But those to me would be the two biggest barriers. We can do better than 506. And I'm sure when we get to the end of that 10-year period, that won't be the end. We'll be setting ourselves the goal for the next 10 years. What do we want to create? So we're not going to sit back and rest on our laurels. We're going to keep moving forward.
Thank you, Deb. One final question. You mentioned that there are 337 units being built by others, which is really commendable. You didn't mention how major developers can assist in this. And I think it's a huge gap in our coverage of potential development of affordable homes. I've had a few conversations with individual developers. I think given the right circumstances, they could be very helpful. I just wonder what could you suggest that we do to improve that conversation and get some mileage from it?
You're so correct around that whole missing piece, because municipalities and nonprofit sector alone can't do this. We need the private sector at the table to help be partners. And we are in conversations with many of those private sector partners. Often they're able to come to the table. They're looking at some of our incentives like development charges, but that doesn't drive the rent down very far. That just keeps it still pretty unaffordable for a number of our households that are on our wait list. We are looking at layering some of those incentives. So where we've got different kind, like the CIP, where we've got that special area that benefits the development of affordable housing in certain key areas, that community improvement plan, we can layer on these different incentives together. And then the private sector is more interested in coming to the table. So.
Good. Thank you, Deb. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Ed Bernanke.
Ed?
So Ed?
Ed, we're going to go to you next. You have to unmute yourself there. Yeah, great.
Yeah, this should be good. Listen, I just want to sort of follow up a question that, in a sense, that what John just asked. I'm still trying to get my head around that there's a target of 504 units over 10 years. Okay, we already know that there's a need for 1,700. COVID and the way the rent and all the new people are moving here are going to put huge pressure on rental costs. So if you have a house, you win. If you're renting, you're a loser. And you're that much closer to poverty. So what is your best estimate of the number of units that actually will be needed in 10 years?
Wow. I mean, if we knew the answers to all of that, we would.
Well, you can't ignore that question, though. I mean,
no, I know, you're right. So let me try to answer it.
We're going 1/3 now of what the need is now, which is completely irrelevant because that'll be 500 units of 5,000. I don't know. I mean, you must have some estimate.
Yeah, so that's our projections are based on what the population growth will be in 10 years and what the need will be in 10 years. The wait list is what you're talking about, is the number of people on the wait list.
Yeah.
That is not, that isn't always the best, what would I call, indicator of, it's an indicator of flow. So we have a stock of housing right now, and we have people that flow through that stock of housing. So as people leave housing, other people on the wait list can get into housing.
Right.
So we have to increase the flow of housing is one piece that we need to do that we haven't done very well, because we have people in housing that are ready to move out of affordable housing into private market housing. Now it's a little more complicated now because of what the market has done. So the market has shifted in a way to make it even harder to attain affordable home ownership and affordable rental. So we don't have control over those pieces. What we have control over is encouraging people who are able to move out of current affordable housing to allow other people to move in. So we need to find a way to encourage that flow, so that it isn't, for some people, you get into housing, you're going to be there for the rest of your life, perhaps, but for others, it's a stepping stone. It's not a long-term option, it's a shorter term option. They're using it to move to something else. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you didn't, not at all.
Can I
You have no estimate at all of how much, what the need will be in 10 years?
Deb,
yes.
Can you guys
there
hear
is
me?
a report. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
It's Brian Hudson speaking. Hi, Ed. So
hello.
Everybody focuses on 506. The Councillor Bell mentioned earlier 337 or 340, whatever it is. So we've always forget the not-for-profit and the charitable sector as well as other sectors. So this plan is actually 846 units. It's not 506. And the plan that was presented in 2019 to City Council and as the Social Services Committee was a projection out 10 years. So what you're asking, Mr. Bernanke, is a projection based on the population. Yes, there'll always be a waiting list, but this is the estimate that professionals came in and our staff came in to estimate this number out to keep up with the demand. So I think that's what the report, that's what the numbers are based on population and need 10 years out.
Yeah, the 5-year update of the housing stability plan has all the numbers and projections in there, and I'm happy to send it to you if you don't have a copy of that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
We have Paul.
It's also available on the website. You can access the report from the website. Sorry,
Paul.
Paul?
Yeah, his hand up.
Hi, Paul. Yes.
Hi, good morning. First of all, thank you very much for putting on this forum. Really appreciate the dialogue. It's a much needed subject for dialogue and creative thinking to resolve, not just here, but across the country. I'm with the Chamber of Commerce, but I'm also a real estate developer. On the availability of housing side and the timelines for approvals and some of the things we were talking about, like backlogs and wait lists, is the city or the county working with zoning to see if we can shorten up the timeline for approvals? One of the struggles the private sector has is bringing units online because the approval process can sometimes be very protracted, especially if you attach the affordable housing piece to it. Despite everyone acknowledging that it's a much needed type of housing in our communities, no one necessarily wants to see an affordable housing project in their neighborhood. Typically, that's a bit of a stigma that we find ourselves pushing up against. Does zoning consider making any proactive changes to the zoning bylaw to consider that type of thing? In other communities, I've seen the city itself do the rezoning process ahead of time, target specific communities, do the rezoning ahead of time, if not for affordable, at least for housing density, so that private people can come in and develop those properties and then create some relief on rental demand and then sort of create some opportunities for those clients who are moving through your system to find maybe not affordable, but more attainable housing now that they've sort of graduated from the program. Just a couple of thoughts, just wondering if there's any sort of background work with zoning or other departments on that front.
Yeah, I can give you a quick update on, I know, Paul, you were involved in the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force on the Industry Partners table. And we talked a lot about some of the recommendations that came from the industry partners to help with that whole planning process. And I know there, all those recommendations have gone to the planning folks, the department to look at, and we'll need to report back on what the outcome is that. I know one of the requests was for affordable housing, could that be accelerated in a different way than maybe others? So could it be bumped through more quickly, or could there be some different, just the permits and the costs of the different parts of the planning process, could that be accelerated or waived? So I know those were recommendations that were made. I don't have anything to report back at this time, but those have gone into the planning department to be considering. As for, I can also speak about the municipally owned property that the municipality has already mapped and inventoried as potentially suitable for affordable housing development. We are going through a process right now to get it development ready. So you're right now, some of those properties aren't zoned properly. So when we mean development ready, it means all the pieces that need to be in place so that when funding comes through or we have an opportunity, that we can go ahead with development. So part of doing that is we're hiring a consultant team to review 5 prioritized sites. They're going to do a feasibility study, and that'll tell us sort of what needs to be done on those pieces of property to get development ready. So that's kind of where we're moving, because we need to line up the next number of sites to reach our 506 units goal. So if the municipality feels that they're not suitable for our own development, then the municipality has a chance to talk about whether we make it available to other nonprofits and co-ops or other private sector partners to develop what we want to see developed on those sites. So we're not there yet, but that's kind of where we're heading, if that helps. Thanks, Dave. Or Paul, sorry.
No more hands right now.
Okay, Brian, did you still had your hand up from before? Do you want to?
I'm fine. I was just trying to throw a lob ball to break the ice for the asking questions, so I'm fine. I was just doing it as a favor to my staff. No, I'm good. So.
Okay, well, we're at the right time that we were wanting to close for today, close to 11. And I want to turn it over to Brian actually to bring closing remarks for today's event and introduce Brian Hutchins, who is our CAO for the city of Brantford. So thanks, Brian.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for coming. I know we all busy schedules and I wish we could be in person, and adds a whole new dynamic. I know we had our council meeting last night in person. It was nice to see people, but obviously physically separated and that sort of stuff. But I want to thank our elected officials for doing some speeches earlier and opening remarks. I think it's very important in relation to the county of Brant and the province and as well as the federal governments, and great relationship with the county of Brant. I want to thank Deb and for her team and giving the details of the mayors, both the county of Brant and as well as the city of Brantford's housing partnership task force, as well as your areas of responsibility and many things you're working on. Lots of work going on in housing. I'll get to that in a second. I want to thank Kelly for coming. You asked how you're going to give back to the community. You're not sure, Kelly? You started. Today you started. Amazing, amazing job giving us your insights. You are giving back to the community by just being here today and giving us your story with you and your son and your housing needs. So thank you very much. It means a lot to us that you took the time today to open yourself up and give us that speech and tell us a bit about your personal situation. Renee, I'd like to be part of your culture. I love eating, I love gathering, I love family. So, thank you for being with us, and thank you for your partnership. We want to continue that into the future, our partnership with, but also your message on housing shouldn't just be Brant native housing, but also be others. And I know that there's about 10,000 people in the city of Brantford. I don't know how many county of Brant, I don't know that statistic, but it's almost 10% of our population that are native backgrounds and connected. So yes, many of people in our housing, not just Brant native, we want to develop that relationship, build that. That's really key to the city and key to my senior management team. But just in general, so in my culture too, I like to gather and eat, but also in a Newfie background. My father lives in Newfoundland. That's where I'm from originally. We like to tell stories. The mayor, it drives the mayor nuts when I go into this, but I have control right now of the microphone, so I'm going to use my story. Way back when, he can't mute me, I don't think. Back in 2000, 2001, I worked for the Niagara region. I was young in those days, if you can imagine, 21 years ago. And I was told, you're responsible. When I started there, I'm an accountant, I have a background, and I was told, and I worked in social services, community services. And I was told at that time, you're in charge of the housing transfer, social housing, we called it in those days. And we had all these players. You had the OHC, the Ontario Housing Corporation, you had the private sectors, as Councillor Bell mentioned, municipal ownership, you had provincial ownership, we had federal ownership, we had not-for-profits, co-op. Niagara region had the blessing of a woman named Betty Ann Baker, who created the biggest, largest co-op network outside of the city of Toronto. A huge amount of co-op providers, I think it was 160, as well as Indigenous providers. So my job was we set up a task force of council, our regional council of 32 members. We set up a 12-person task force to even explain this. It was very confusing where all the partners were coming from and all these new acronyms that we've been exposed to today. And we had to do 5 public sessions to talk about governance and what we're going to do. We met numerous big crowds actually came out because people didn't know. They were used to working with the province with a bigger bank account than the region of Niagara had. And the co-ops were upset and not-for-profits, and everybody didn't know what the future looked like back in those days. And we had 2 long council nights debating this because we did an engineering study of the deferred maintenance on we're getting this big assets, all these buildings across the Niagara region. And some people saw it as assets, other people saw it as a liability. You need to fix these buildings. We did a deferred maintenance study and it didn't come out really good. And we learned about things called PIDs. What that is projects in difficulty being transferred over. We had to fix them. Some people were sliding down one building was sliding down a ravine. So there's quotes that night, those long nights of 32 councillors debating over what they're going to do with this housing they're being transferred over. And people said, now I'm going to get calls in the middle of the night about toilets being backed up. And one of our most outstanding councillors in Niagara region has passed away. There's many things named after him, very much into seniors issues. He shouted out, this is a tough pill to swallow. I remember it like yesterday. So councils across the province inherited housing, and they also inherited a big fix-up bill, and many didn't invest. So here we are 20 years later. I moved on to other things. I went to the university sector in the 2010s, and I watched some of my researchers and David Siegel and Ken Kernahan at Brock University where I worked, and Dan Spicer do research on this, and there wasn't much building going on. Most councils chose to ignore it, put it aside. They had other things, they had bridges and things to build. I'll tell you, when I landed here in 2019 in County of Brant in the city of Brantford, we do the CMSM work for them. I've never been more proud to be in an organization that comes up with a plan that is trying to finance it and deliver on it. 506 units for municipal, yes, and we're working with our community partners. And this is the important part of this day. It's not about the municipal. I know Deb and team did a lot of talking, but all the other partners trying to build the 340 units as well. And to some of your comments, how do we even go bigger than that? How do we try to figure that out, innovate to the private sector or other ways of doing this? That's what today is about. So this never been more proud to be a place that wants to invest in housing, invest in people. I mean, you want to be in a community. I always say Brantford and County of Brant, I'm sure, I can't speak for them, but we want to be the best place to live, but also best place to raise and be with family. Heard that throughout this. Heard this from Kelly. We heard this from Renee. So we know to invest, it takes a village to grow a child. And all these people on this session right now is a village from various sectors. And we'll take all of us over the next, it's not 10 years anymore. It's now 9, I think it's 8 now to get to build these, to even get to keep us at a status quo position and maybe even overachieve and try to get further. So I want to thank everyone here today. Thank the elected officials, thank the businesses, thank the not-for-profits, all you volunteers, all interested citizens in being here today, helping, giving us input, hearing what we're doing, hearing what others are doing, some of our partners who spoke today, hearing some of the testimonials from our families, and to make Brantford and the County of Brant a better place to live, raise a child and raise a family. So thank you very much, everyone. Everyone has a great day, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks. And we look forward to maybe an in-person National Housing Day next year. We'll see. Thanks, Brian, for your words. We are very fortunate that this community, we have the support of our elected officials and who are putting money behind the plan as well. And so we are grateful for that. And we look forward to seeing you all next year. So take care and have a great day. Happy National Housing Day.